Welcome to Leading Today. I'm Dr. Lisa Bagby. When we think about toxic leadership, we often picture someone who yells, intimidates, or openly bullies people. Those leaders certainly do exist, but today I want to challenge you with a different question. What if the most expensive toxic leader in your organization isn't the one everyone complains about? What if they're the one no one talks about at all? The leader whose team quietly transfers, the leader whose employees stop volunteering ideas, the leader whose meetings are silent, the leader whose turnover isn't alarming enough to trigger concerns, but whose people slowly lose their confidence, creativity, and commitment. The most dangerous toxic leaders are often invisible. Today, we're exploring why organizations overlook them, what they actually cost, and how you can identify them before your best employees walk out the door. So, here's something worth considering. Not every difficult leader is toxic. Leaders have hard conversations, they make unpopular decisions, and they do hold people accountable. That is not toxicity. Toxic leadership exists when a leader consistently creates an environment where people perform for fear rather than trust. It's less about personality and more about the emotional climate that they actually create. And healthy leaders may create temporary discomfort, but toxic leaders create chronic uncertainty. So you might ask, why do toxic leaders go unnoticed? And that's a legitimate question. But one of the biggest myths in organization is this: if no one is complaining, everything must be fine. Well, not necessarily. In many organizations, employees don't complain because they've already concluded nothing will change. And silence is often mistaken for satisfaction. But silence can also mean resignation. Employees become emotionally economical. They stop giving ideas, they stop raising concerns, they're not volunteering, and they actually stop disagreeing. And eventually, they stop caring. Leaders sometimes celebrate these teams because there are no conflicts. There's no complaints, no drama. But ask yourself, is the team engaged or simply quiet? Those are very different things. But here's another uncomfortable truth: many toxic leaders deliver results, revenue, productivity, operational goals, deadlines. On paper, they appear successful. So organizations reward the outcome while ignoring the damage created along the way. It's like celebrating someone for driving across the country quickly while ignoring that they destroyed the car getting there. Eventually, the repair bill does arrive, and organizations pay it through things like high turnover, burnout, increased employee relations cases, declining innovation. There's a loss of psychological safety, poor succession pipelines because people are leaving. There's low engagement, you have recruiting challenges, and then of course reputation and or brand damage. The financial costs show up much later than the leadership behaviors that caused them. So what are some of the hidden behaviors, you might ask? Well, most toxic leadership doesn't actually look dramatic. Sometimes it looks incredibly professional. Listen and watch maybe for some of these behaviors. A leader who always has an explanation, but never accountability. A leader who publicly supports inclusion, but privately excludes people from opportunities. A leader who says, my door is always open, yet employees never walk through it. A leader whose meetings have no disagreement, no debate, no questions. Everyone agrees every time. That is not alignment. It might actually be fear. So watch for leaders instead who take credit quickly, share blame even faster, interrupt frequently, listen selectively, and ask for input after decisions have already been made. But praise loyalty over honesty, reward agreement instead of curiosity. These behaviors rarely generate formal complaints, but they slowly erode trust. See, you thought I was going to give you this list of either ors, toxic this way, but not toxic that way. Mm-mm. You have to listen carefully, but you have to watch even more closely. The quiet signals. If employees aren't complaining, what should leaders watch for then? Well, pay attention to patterns. High performers suddenly become average performers. Meetings become shorter. People stop challenging assumptions. Internal transfers increase, but employees also use more sick time. and innovation declines. People describe work as, quote, fine. Fine can be one of the most dangerous words in employee engagement because people who are inspired don't usually describe their work as fine. So, what should you listen for? Well, sometimes employees tell us everything we need to know, just not directly. So, I want you to pay attention very closely here. Listen for phrases like, I just keep my head down, or it's easier not to say anything, or, well, that's just how they are, or maybe I'll wait until another opportunity opens. Or perhaps you heard, I don't think it's worth bringing up. Those are not complaints, they're warning signs. And I would actually encourage you to pause here, write those down, and keep those somewhere that you can access. Because if you come across employees who say these things, you need to dive further in. One of the biggest mistakes that organizations make is waiting for exit interviews. Exit interviews are lagging indicators. While they are good to help gain insight and see where you can take corrective actions organizationally or even with the leader, they're lagging indicators because by then you've already lost. Instead, conduct what I call stay conversations. Ask questions that uncover the employee experience. But you have to do these things authentically. You have to carve the designated amount of time and the undivided attention so that you can gain the information you need while building trust. So, I'm going to give you a few questions that you can actually use. Questions like, when was the last time you felt genuinely heard? Or, what part of your job takes the most emotional energy? Another one, what conversations are people having that leadership isn't having? And then one more, if you became the leader tomorrow, what would you change first? And I would encourage you to definitely include that question. Now, these conversations often reveal leadership issues months before resignations begin. Okay? So it's really putting you ahead of the curve. But here's a question every leader should ask themselves. When people leave my team, what do they miss? If the answer is only flexibility or convenience or location, well, something deeper may be missing because healthy leaders leave fingerprints on people. People become more confident, more capable, more courageous, more willing to lead themselves. That's the legacy of healthy leadership. So give that thought and see, are you doing those things? So I'll leave you with one final reflection. Organizations often ask, why didn't anyone tell us this leader was toxic? But maybe they did, just not with their words. Maybe they told you through silence, through declining engagement, through reduced innovation, through increased transfers, through emotional withdrawal. Leadership isn't measured by how loudly people applaud you. Sometimes it's measured by whether people still feel safe enough to disagree with you. Because trust isn't built when everyone agrees. Trust is built when everyone knows they can, and respectfully so. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Leading Today. If today's conversation challenged your thinking, please subscribe so you never miss an episode. But drop into the comments, what toxic leader traits have you seen or experienced? And then share this episode with another leader because the healthiest organizations don't simply remove toxic leaders. They create cultures where toxicity cannot quietly survive. Until next time, keep leading with courage, curiosity, and humanity. But above all, keep leading today.